Samsung Galaxy Note 2. Be creative.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Iyad Murtada, and I would like to thank you very much for attending this webinar. Our webinar today is going to be sponsored by Samsung Galaxy Note 2, and it's in partnership with the training hotline hosted by Open Thinking. So today we have an amazing webinar called Marketing Worth Sharing, and this is conducted by our special guest, the Marketoonist. This is his title, and his name is Tom Fishburne. He's an expert in innovation and marketing, and I was following his cartoons for many years. He created a really series of cartoons about business and innovation, and the corporate environment, how they are thinking about business, and how marketers and innovators are thinking about brands. And he is one of the well-known cartoonists in that field. So today he's going to be sharing with us some insight about how marketers are really reinventing the way marketing is happening, and how companies they can come up with a new and innovative products. So here I will give the mic to Mr. Tom.
We are in the best time in history ever to work in marketing because of the tools that are at our disposal. There's an incredible amount of change in the world of marketing. And today I wanted to share about some of the insights that I picked up in my marketing career that I think should be helpful to anyone working in marketing or innovation. And then I know we'll have a few questions. A few of you have sent some questions in advance. And I'm going to start off actually with a cartoon. So this first cartoon has two executives talking around a table. The first one saying, "What's the big campaign idea?" The second one, "We're going digital. Facebook, YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. What are we going to do in all those channels? I don't know. We'll figure it out later." And for me, that summarizes a lot of how I see the state of marketing today. Because there's so many exciting tools at our disposal, we can sometimes be so excited about this shiny new thing and applying marketing to applying the latest tool to our marketing campaigns that we forget about the importance of the creative idea that is needed to power those campaigns. We can sometimes be so excited about getting onto Facebook, YouTube, mobile app, Pinterest, that we forget the importance of finding a creative idea that will actually work in those channels. Technology cannot save a boring idea, but it can make an exciting idea even I want to talk about are some of the ways to develop creative ideas that will work in all of the new channels that are at our disposal. Everything that I needed to know about marketing, I learned by drawing cartoons. I started drawing cartoons in a very unusual place, Harvard Business School. I started drawing cartoons in the back room of the class 12 years ago. And what started as a hobby eventually turned into a big part of my life. I published for 2 years at Harvard Business School, and then didn't have a school paper anymore. So I started just sending a weekly cartoon to my colleagues and seeing who wanted to receive those. People started to email the cartoons around, and within a few weeks, a few thousand people were reading my cartoons every single week. And today, my cartoons reach over 100,000 people a week. And it taught me the importance of connecting with an audience with content over time. And the value in growing an audience through content. I went on to work in traditional marketing. So my background in marketing has been largely in consumer products with some of the better known brands in the United States. I'm not sure how many of these brands are in Dubai, but I worked in Haagen-Dazs, which is an ice cream brand, Cheerios in cereal, Yoplait in yogurt, Green Giant in vegetables. So I've worked in many of the categories across the typical supermarket shelves. And many of these brands were quite large, over $1 billion in sales. We had large marketing budgets. My Haagen-Dazs advertising budget was over $25 million. And I learned quite a bit about working with big icon brands. But many of these brands were also from a different era. Many of these brands started in the 1950s and in the 1960s when marketing worked a certain way. And I learned when I shifted gears and went to a very different type of brand. I joined a small consumer products brand called Method. And Method was going into the category of household cleaning. But unlike brands like Haagen-Dazs, Cheerios, and Green Giant with large advertising budgets, at Method we had no advertising budget. We calculated for fun that the large brands that we competed against at Method spent more money on toilet paper for their employees than our entire marketing budget. So it gave a sense of the challenge that we faced as a small brand in this category trying to compete in household cleaning. And what I learned in a brand like Method is that what's more important than the paid media dollars that we have in our marketing budgets are the ideas that we use to get across to put out into the world, and that you can do a lot with the creative ideas at the core, even if you don't have large marketing budgets. And along that journey, I continued to draw cartoons, and some of these cartoons parodied the world that we lived in across these different brands. I ultimately, 2 years ago, started a full-time cartoon studio called Marketoonist Studios, and I work with a large number of brands, helping these brands communicate with cartoons to reach their audiences. And this is just an example of one of those cartoons for a company called Baynote. Baynote makes software that helps with e-commerce personalization. And rather than have marketing that just pitched features and benefits, we created a whole cartoon series where every cartoon parodies a certain aspect of e-commerce personalization. In this one, I buy one present for my niece, and now it's nothing but My Little Pony ads. I hear you. Hey, does it really come with that saddle? And the idea that you can communicate with an audience in a way that doesn't feel like traditional marketing. So I share this as a bit of a background on my perspective in marketing. It's across the gamut from large consumer brands with big advertising budgets to very small, scrappy brands with no advertising budget, to now where I'm helping brands communicate with cartoons. What I've learned along the way is what I want to share today. There are 5 major lessons that I've picked up as both a marketer and as a cartoonist. And most of what I've picked up, I've learned through the funny medium of cartoons. The world of cartoons, at least in the United States, is really changing. People love cartoons, but traditional cartoons have been in the classic newspapers and magazines. And today's cartoonists have to connect with their own audiences. And I found inspiration in how some of these cartoonists have done that. And I think that it's relevant to any type of marketer trying to build their audiences, because you effectively have unparalleled tools at our disposal to connect with our audiences, but we have to do it in a very different way than I did when I worked at General Mills, Green Giant, Haagen-Dazs, because we no longer have the advertising. We can no longer break through with just paid media. So the first big lesson that I picked up along the way is that nowadays we're all publishers. We now all have a podium to connect with our audiences. But what's changed is how we do that. And what sometimes brands forget is that publishing is a privilege, that just because we have the podium to connect with our audiences doesn't mean that our audiences actually want to listen to us. When I finished Harvard Business School and thought about drawing cartoons for a living, I looked at the traditional career path, and I had a choice between what I think of as the postage stamp or the inbox. On the left is the postage stamp, and there were cartoons in some of the traditional channels like the Wall Street Journal, but they tended to be small like a postage stamp, and you couldn't actually even have your name attached to the cartoon in a way that let you actually show off as a cartoonist. Or on the right-hand side, that's the inbox of the cartoon editor at the New Yorker magazine. Every week he gets over 1,000 cartoon submissions from cartoonists wanting to be in that magazine. That's what the traditional landscape looked like to me as a cartoonist. And I think it's very similar to the landscape of any marketer trying to break through the clutter of our audiences, because our audiences have more clutter than ever before. And we have to find ways to break through that clutter to really be meaningful. I ended up doing a very different approach. So I just created cartoons and sent it out to an audience. And as a result, the Wall Street Journal ended up coming to me and taking my cartoons and putting them into other places, and ended up asking me to even develop a cartoon book. which should be on the screen here, a 20-page cartoon book on how to connect with their audience. And the lesson to me was that if you spend more time connecting with the audience that wants to receive your material, you'll end up making a far greater impact than if you go the traditional channel. Um, the opportunity is illustrated a bit in this cartoon, that you have two people sitting at a cafe table surrounded by all the paid media in the world, but ultimately one of them is saying, I'll have what she's having. And in a sense, as marketers, all of us are trying to get to this moment, this I'll have what she's having moment. That's the big opportunity that's available to all of us, that suddenly you can stand out from the clutter and actually connect with the consumer, even if you don't have all of the traditional paid media and big advertising budgets. But you can only do that if you have a remarkable story at the start and you have something remarkable to share. The problem is that many brands, as they think about how to connect with their audiences, and the fact that all brands are now publishers, is they develop a platform that looks like this: extra, extra, read all about us, promotion, self-serving article, blah, 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 corporate fluff. That's how many brands try to connect with their audiences. And I think it entirely misses the point, because consumers and audiences don't like being connected to in this way. Just because you put a like us on Facebook icon onto what we want to share doesn't mean that people will want to share us. We have to have a remarkable idea worth sharing at the start. And that's a real shift. And as many brands jump into the world of social media, they focus so much on getting the like that they forget about the importance of having a remarkable idea that's worth sharing. There's a great quote from the founder of an American company called Geek Squad, that advertising is a tax you pay for unremarkable thinking. And that's the main lesson I want to share today, is that it's important to think about the remarkable thinking at the start. And if you think about your advertising as a tax, it forces you to be much more creative. When I worked at Method and we didn't have big advertising dollars, we couldn't rest on our laurels. So we had to have really creative ideas at the start. When I worked at Haagen-Dazs with big advertising budgets, sometimes we would use those big advertising budgets as a crutch. And the exciting thing today for marketers is that if we have remarkable thinking at the start, our ideas can share like never before. And if we're fortunate enough to have advertising dollars to put behind those ideas, they'll get amplified even further. Like I said earlier, technology can't save a boring idea, but it can amplify a remarkable idea. That's the opportunity for all of us. The one brand that I think is doing this phenomenally well is American Express, which is a credit card that's developed a marketing platform that's effectively an online magazine. It's a resource for small business entrepreneurs, and has amazing articles helping those entrepreneurs navigate the issues and challenges of being a small business entrepreneur. But in very few places in this marketing platform will you find any information about their actual credit card. It's entirely organized to be a useful resource for those small business entrepreneurs. And I think that more and more brands can think about communicating with their audiences in this way, and having marketing that is designed to be of use to those audiences at the start. Best marketing doesn't feel like marketing. And that's a big opportunity for all of us to think about how we connect with our audiences in a way that doesn't feel like marketing. The second big lesson that I picked up from being a cartoonist and from being a marketer is that it's not about you. Many brands get this wrong, and when you interact with brands, their Facebook pages look like this: me, 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 me. I've spent hours on self-promotional comments. Why doesn't anyone like me? Facebook must be broken. Or in connecting with the brand and packaging. But enough about me. What about you? What do you think of me? Many brands talk like this. We're trained as marketers that when we connect with audiences, at every interaction, we should parrot our single-minded proposition. But the problem with that is that consumers can quickly filter that out, and they don't want to be spoken to in this type of a way. Brand storytelling too often sounds like this: this brand is new and improved, now with 50% more claims than the leading brand. Consumers live happily ever after. The end. Boring. Where's mom? We forget that just as the children in this cartoon can see right through that, our consumers see right through that. And there's a big opportunity for brands that can think about their communication in a different way. The problem is when brands jump into social media, they focus so much on how they talk with consumers and the message they're getting across rather than the benefits to consumers. We just tweeted, then we Facebooked, then we Google Plus, then we blogged, then we sent you an email newsletter with an update. Good for you, yogurt brand. And there's an opportunity for brands that can think differently. The lesson came across to me in the cartooning world from the classic New Yorker magazine, which has, in my view, some of the best cartoons in the world. But the problem that they reached in the late 1990s was that those cartoons had stopped being funny to most people. The New Yorker started becoming a place where the cartoons were only funny to those who were in the know. And as a result, the New Yorker was seen as elitist, and they didn't get most people. They didn't connect with their readers. The situation was ended up being parodied in the classic TV show Seinfeld, where the character Elaine goes to see the New Yorker cartoon editor to complain about the fact that the New Yorker cartoons weren't funny and weren't understandable to anyone outside of the New Yorker. And what's particularly funny about this episode is that this episode was written by a New Yorker cartoonist who happened to write for Seinfeld. He wrote this episode making fun of the New Yorker. And soon after that, the New Yorker launched what is one of the greatest involvement tactics of all time, the New Yorker caption contest. Every week, the New Yorker puts out a cartoon that doesn't have a caption. And they ask their readers to come up with the captions to the New Yorker cartoon. And there's a voting process to connect with the audiences where everybody can pick what the best caption of the cartoon is, and then they announce the winner. And it makes the cartoon itself egalitarian, where the audience is creating the content for the cartoon. And that's incredibly powerful. And they now get several thousand cartoons submissions every single week. They've had over 100,000 entries since they started. And every one of those opportunities is a potential for the magazine to connect with its audience. This is an example, and what's interesting of this example where somebody's coming up with a caption is that the bottom caption is from Roger Ebert, who's one of the most famous film critics in the United States. And this film critic that everybody in the United States knows, has said that he has done more work for free for the New Yorker than for any of his paid jobs in the past 10 years. And he's done that because he wanted to connect with the New Yorker because of this caption contest. And the lesson, I think, is there for any brand that wants to connect with their audiences. And when you can make your audiences feel involved, the power is so much stronger. Seth Godin is quite a well-known marketing person and wrote about the idea of how cartoons are effective at doing this, and that they work because they're not monologues. Even though the medium is one-directional, a dialogue takes place. In between the panels, in between the talk bubbles, the cartoonist demands that you fill in the blanks. Marketers are taught from the beginning to grab the microphone and never let go. We can learn from cartoonists that sometimes you gain more power when you let the other person feel engaged. And that's the big lesson, I think, for marketing, that the importance of letting the other person feel engaged. I've done this with a lot of my marketing campaigns with clients where we use New Yorker-style caption contests as ways for brands to connect with their audiences. And it's phenomenal to see the response, the number of entries that we get from people trying to figure out why this woman is in an emergency break glass box. And it helps this brand, Kronos, connect with their audience in very powerful ways. Here's an example of a brand that I think missed the plot and got this wrong. So as many of you probably know, we've had a devastating hurricane the last few weeks in the United States on the East Coast. And as that was happening and millions of people were affected, many people lost their homes, many brands try to connect with this disaster. Several of them focus only on selling products. So American Apparel is a fashion brand, and they ran this promotion saying, in case you're bored during the storm, 20% off everything for the next 36 hours. And you can see the red zones in the United States that were affected by this hurricane. But it's obvious how this fashion brand completely got it wrong, because anyone who's actually affected by this hurricane is not bored. Instead, they're quite affected. by what's happening on the East Coast. And this, as a result, this brand received extreme negative publicity because they were thinking so much about them and the products they were selling than they were thinking about their actual audience's lives. A couple of brands that got it right were Tide and Duracell. Tide is a leading laundry brand in the United States. They sent large trucks going into the center of Manhattan that allowed people affected by the storm and didn't have any power to wash their clothes in the side of the trucks and actually provided a service to those audiences. Another brand at the bottom, these are both Procter & Gamble brands, the brand at the bottom, Duracell, sent in these trucks in the center of Manhattan that let people charge their electronic devices in the aftermath of the storm where they didn't have any power. These are two brands that didn't focus on their safe fighting power of their laundry or how great their batteries were. Instead, in the midst of this disaster, they thought of what their brands could stand for their consumers. And they actually ended up solving consumer problems and generated quite a bit of positive publicity because they shifted gears and focused on what really mattered to their audiences. That's a big opportunity, I think, for many of us as marketers. Third big insight is finding our niche and how we connect with our audiences. Many of us, particularly those who work with big brands, with big media dollars, we think of our target audiences like what's in this cartoon. Who else should we target? And then we end up trying to appeal to everyone. And the problem with appealing to everyone is that by appealing to everyone, we end up appealing to no one in particular. The opportunity, I think, for brands is that it's better to appeal to a small group in a very powerful way than it is to try to appeal to everybody and not break through the clutter. And that's a big opportunity for brands to get more laser targeted in how we talk with their audiences. I picked up a lot of this in the world of cartooning. Some of the most successful cartoonists of all are not understood by those who don't work in a particular group. So this is a cartoon from a cartoon called XKCD. This is the most widely read web cartoon in the world. There are over 5 million people a day who read this cartoon. And in this case, you won't understand this cartoon unless you're a Unix programmer. And so the first character is saying, make me a sandwich. The second one says, what? Make it yourself. The first one says, sudo make me a sandwich. And the second one says, okay. And most of us on this webinar will not understand the joke in this cartoon unless you're a Unix programmer and know that the word sudo is a Unix programming prompt that allows you to take over another person's computer. And what's funny about this cartoon is that it's not funny to most people. But if you're a Unix programmer, you find this very funny. In fact, I shared this cartoon in London a few years ago, and out of the audience of 200 people, only 5 people laughed. But one of the 5 people was wearing this cartoon as their t-shirt. And that's the power of connecting to a niche. That he felt such a meaningful connection to this cartoon because it spoke to him in a way that other forms of communication didn't. Here's another cartoon from that cartoonist that I won't read in detail except to show the bottom left panel where you'll see a string of numbers. And he included those numbers in one of his cartoons with no explanation. And you wouldn't have known what they understood until you realize that it's an actual riddle. It's a riddle that those numbers stand for a longitude, a latitude, a date, and a time. And what's amazing about that is that longitude, latitude, date, and time ended up standing for a date 4 months after this cartoon was published in a field a mile or two outside of Boston. And at that date and time, several thousand people showed up in this field. And they showed up in this field because they had cracked that code. And what's amazing is to get that much motivation and engagement out of an audience. And you can see the picture on the right, the people who are just ecstatic about the fact that they had cracked this code and the fact that this cartoonist had connected to them in this meaningful way. And the lesson to me, the fact that this cartoonist connects with his audience shows that why he's such a successful cartoonist in general online, because more than ever, there's power in connecting with a niche audience in a way that really resonates with them. And there's more opportunity for us as brand marketers and to think about how we connect with our audiences in a very niche way. When I worked at Method, we realized that one of our fans for this brand had started his own blog that was nothing about it. This blog was entirely written just about our brand. Our brand was called Method, and this consumer started this blog called Method Lust, one man's unsuppressed lust for all things method. It's amazing that he would find such connection in a brand of cleaning products that he would start a dedicated blog just about this brand. And he started it 4 years ago, and he updates it at least 3 times a week. And what's amazing is that he gets at least 3 to 5 comments per post. Now, it's a little bit creepy that somebody would find this much of a connection with our brand, but for every guy like this, for every person like this named Nathan, who connects with our brand in such a deep and meaningful way, we knew there were lots of other consumers who may not go to the extent of starting a dedicated blog, but they would still tell all their friends about this brand. And I guarantee that there are very few dedicated blogs about brands of cleaning products, because most brands of cleaning products try to talk to everybody rather than talking to a few people in a deep and meaningful way. And that's the real opportunity, I think, for brands to break that shift and to talk in a deep and meaningful way with a few. Okay, the fourth big thing that I've seen in the world of marketing is the importance of continuity. Because of social media and because of YouTube, we suddenly feel like there's tremendous value in going viral. And many of us as marketers have a place in our marketing plans to create a viral video, for instance. But the trap that we get into is that we think that all we have to do is create a piece of media and then cross our fingers that it will go viral. And like in this cartoon, you'll suddenly see tremendous sales results. But the problem is, what if our video doesn't go viral? And it's sometimes a trap because as marketers, in the search for creating the next viral video, we forget the power of connecting with our audience in a continuous way over time. Because the truth is that most videos don't go viral. YouTube, every minute, 45 hours of content are uploaded into YouTube. And only a small portion of those will actually go viral. And so the answer isn't to create one piece of media and then to cross our fingers and hope that it goes viral. The answer is to think about the audience that we're reaching and reach them continuously over time in a way that's meaningful. Because when we as brand owners create something and it doesn't go viral, we get frustrated. And we end up creating what I think of as ghost towns, social media ghost towns. We create Twitter and Facebook pages that end up having no content on them because we create a piece of media and when it doesn't go viral right away, we give up. And that's the real problem, is the fact that many of these brand pages haven't been updated months ago and the brand owners have given up. There's a lot to learn from the world of cartoons in this, because most cartoons that are successful have continuity. This cartoon, Peanuts, by Charles Schulz, had been running for 50 years before the cartoonist died. And people tuned in every single day because they wanted to see the next installment. And there's real power in that, in brands that create that sense of anticipation that people want to turn into the next installment. This is one of my most favorite new cartoons, a guy named Scott C. Every day, he creates a cartoon that shows a great showdown, a classic juxtaposition that many people would recognize. So in the bottom right is Titanic, the big ship meeting the iceberg. The top right is from this movie called The Great Lebowski. And every day you tune in because you want to find out what the next great showdown is. And not enough brands create that sense of anticipation that people want to find out what the next installment is. There's an old cartoon saying that that cartoons are like a public utility, that people complain when they're not there. And that's a real shift from how most brands work. Very few pieces of marketing when people complain when it's not there, not in your inbox, when it's not on a billboard ad across the street. Most ads take the opposite approach and they try to interrupt you. But there's real opportunity in marketing that creates a sense of anticipation. I'm going to share an example from a really funny category. This is a brand called Aura Brush. Aura Brush is a brand of tongue scraper that helps you fight bad breath. So this little tongue scraper, you scrape on your tongue and it makes your breath smell better. It's a really boring category. And you can imagine that that most of the products in this category would do nothing but talk about how it helps fight bad breath. But how boring this is, and how little would people want to engage with a product like this. But yet this brand, Brush, is the most widely watched YouTube channel. If you look at the top right, they've had over 46 million video views, which is just astounding because it's a brand of tongue scraper. And how many people would want to find a brand of tongue scraper that interesting? But what they've done is create a sense of anticipation and expectation where you're creating great content all the time. And they put it online and people really react to it. The answer is that they didn't create just one video, they created a lot of them. Beyond the first videos, they created this ongoing series called Diary of a Dirty Tongue, and how this tongue cleaner helps clean that dirty tongue. And it's a video they put up every single week, and people tune into it every single week because they want to get the next installment. And the lesson from their founder is that everyone is on a rampage to figure out how to make their viral video. To gain a loyal following, create a steady stream of content. It's not enough to be a one-hit wonder. And in the world of music, there are a lot of one-hit wonders, a song that you may hear once, but then the band does nothing else. And I think that much marketing works like that. That we have a campaign mentality where we create one campaign, we hope it goes viral, and when it doesn't, we're disappointed and we move on to the next campaign. But there's a real opportunity to instead think about continuity. The last big thing I want to share is the importance of making our audience awesome. And this is a real shift for brands that are focused too much on features and benefits. In this cartoon, I parody 5 types of social media strategies. The first one is the like grab approach. Like us so we can tell you how awesome we are. The second is the broadcast. We are awesome, we are awesome, we are awesome. The third one is promotion. Awesome deal, half price, sale. The fourth one is the one-hit wonder I just talked about. Help our awesome video go viral. But what's all too rare is the last bucket. How can we help you be more awesome? How can we help our audience be more awesome? There's a software engineer named Kathy Sierra that had a wonderful quote around this, that it does not matter how awesome your product is, or your presentation, or your post. Your awesome thing matters only to the extent that it serves the user's ability to be a little more awesome. And that's a real shift. That it's not about our features and our benefits. It's about making our users more awesome. This is a cartoon that's done a great job of this. This is one of the most widely read cartoons on the internet. It's called The Oatmeal. And it's very funny. It has a lot of geek humor. And people love the cartoons. But what's most amazing is how he's engaged his audience to do awesome things. He did a cartoon recently about a man named Nikola Tesla, who's an historic figure who helped develop the light bulb before Edison, but didn't get a lot of credit for it, and has some of the best inventions on Earth. He wrote a tribute cartoon about this geek. And what's incredible is not how much his audience loved this cartoon, but then he got the idea that there's not a museum in testimony for this famous geek. And so he's going to use his audience of cartoon readers to build the first ever Tesla museum. So he started a campaign to raise money to build a museum. And this is a cartoonist reaching cartoon readers. But in the first week, he raised almost $900,000. And today he's raised over $2 million to build the first ever museum. And what's incredible about this is that it's not about his cartoons. It's about this cause to build this museum in honor of somebody that his audience would find meaningful. And his audience ended up responding in a powerful way. And the best brands do this. This is a small clothing brand in San Francisco called Beta Brand. And every week, Beta Brand launches a new article of clothing they put on the internet. And it would be possible for them to just talk about each piece of clothing and how amazing it was. But instead, they make their audience feel incredible. This is a brand called the Preposterously Patriotic Pants, and very American type of pants that they then showcase on their website that their audience can actually wear and feel very patriotic. But what's incredible is that it then pops up in amazing circumstances. This guy on the left is one of the most famous comedians in the United States called Stephen Colbert, and he wore these pants to make it feel more awesome. And he then decided to turn this into a contest where the audience on this website could send in pictures of themselves wearing this clothing, and they would turn these pictures into their website and make the people famous on their website for a day. They would then give the people a link to their website with the reader wearing the article of clothing, so they could share this website to all of their friends, and their friends would wonder what they're doing on this website wearing this clothing. And suddenly they got deluged with all of these pictures of people who wear this clothing. This is a man wearing the Red Devil smoking jacket. And it's one thing that this Red Devil smoking jacket is enjoyable to this guy. What's more incredible is the fact that he feels great taking a picture of himself in this article of clothing. And then this website then creates a dedicated website starring this picture. So this guy will share this with all of his friends because this article of clothing makes him feel even more awesome, or makes this group of people feel even more awesome because they're wearing this clothing. It makes these guys want to ski and wear this crazy clothing and take pictures of themselves, send it to the website, and end up on this website that can then be shared with all of their friends. Or have somebody buy this article of clothing for their baby to then share with all of their friends. And the lesson there, I think, is that if we can do more of what's in this picture, this guy is wearing a pair of pants made out of disco ball material, and he's skydiving into an event, having a picture taken of himself, put on this website that he can then share with all of his friends, because this brand makes him feel awesome. And if more and more of our marketing does that, and makes our audiences feel more awesome, our marketing will be even more successful. So here are the 5 things I wanted to share with you today, and then I'm going to go to a couple of the questions that we've gotten, which is that we are all publishers, and that publishing is a privilege, and it's not about you, it's about your audiences, that we need to preach to our choir or find our niches, that continuity trumps virality, and that we need to make our audiences awesome. Those are the 5 major lessons that I wanted to share with you today that I picked up both from my cartooning history and from my marketing history. And hopefully the audio is coming through okay, given the problems with the sound quality. So a couple of the questions that we've gotten so far in advance, and I'll go to the ones here. Somebody asked, with the competitiveness of most companies in our world today, what's the ultimate way a company can be innovative? This was from Miriam Berger. And the answer that I would give to that is that it is more competitive than ever. There's more products being launched every year than ever before. And the trouble is that the vast majority of those products fail. Over 90% of products fail within the first year. And it's a real challenge as a marketer to launch products that can break through the clutter with their audiences and actually have a connection. And I think that the answer, the problem that many brands get into, is a cycle of one-upmanship, where a competitor launches a product, so they launch a product. And then the other competitor launches another product, and it's continually one-upping each other. And you end up with an echo chamber where brands are only talking to themselves and focused so much about their audiences. The value, I think, is in ignoring some of the rules of the category. When I was at Method, the cleaning brand, the cleaning category was incredibly complex and competitive. And there was a lot of new introductions every year. The reason Method ended up being successful, and it grew from $0 to $100 million in sales in less than 10 years, was because it ignored the rules of the category. And some of those rules in the category included the fact that the category didn't think that people cared about design. And the category created products that had a lot of very powerful chemicals in them. Method was successful because it broke those rules. It created products that had a design aesthetic, and it created products that were eco-friendly and safe for the home. And it's amazing that the category wasn't paying attention to that. But Method was, because there were new entrants in the category, and they could break those rules. So I think the opportunity to be innovative is to break the rules of the category. second big question I've gotten is from Hamad Mustaq, which is how to encourage innovation in a large bureaucratic organization where there are standardized and fixed processes. And this is very tricky, and that's something I'm going to talk about in the innovation workshop in 2 weeks in Dubai. The idea about being David within Goliath, the idea about being a pirate rather than being part of the Navy, and the opportunity to do that. And the best example that I can share is the idea of why it's challenging to create innovations in bureaucratic companies. And much of that problem relates to the idea of risk, and that organizations are great at squashing out risk. But the problem is that in an environment that squashes out risk, the ideas that launch end up being survival of the safest. The safest ideas often launch, not the most innovative. And the opportunity is to get through the stage gates in a way that is truly innovative. Well, one way to do that is to think about the idea of the Trojan horse, which is a classic story of a horse being brought to the gates, and then there's an army hidden within that can then be successful. The model that I would take for innovation is to rethink the Trojan horse as the Trojan mouse. To think about a version of your idea that can slide underneath the radar and start having traction before the organization has had an opportunity to squash the idea. And so to take a version of your idea as a proof of concept or as a prototype, to then create a version of the innovation that works and is functional, that's underneath the radar, and then try to grow from within. And then it's possible, even within a bureaucratic organization, to have an idea that's very innovative and unique. Okay, the third big question that I've gotten is from Vivek Iyer, which is to brief us on what differentiates creative marketing from social media. And my point there, I would say, is that so many people think of social media as the Facebook-like, but I think that what's more important is the creative marketing, because if our ideas are worth sharing at the start, people are going to share them. But too often, the focus is on making your ideas share rather than having them sharing at the start. So I would say the focus should be on the shift. The fourth question I've gotten is from Tabinda, which is how to cater to different target audiences even while maintaining your brand identity. And that's going to be tricky because as you talk to niche audiences, as I talked about in my presentation, as you get very niche, it can be tricky if you're a brand that talks to different audiences. And I think the value there is that to define what those audiences are, and then to talk to each of those audiences in a very niche way. If you talk niche, you can reach mainstream audiences by being focused on a core. You'll appeal to those that aren't in that core. They will gravitate to you, even though you're talking to a focused niche, because you stand for something. The example that I'll give is when I worked on a brand of cereal in the United States called Cheerios. And in the United States, Cheerios talks to new mothers, and it also talks to adults who are worried about cholesterol. They're two very different audiences. The cereal in the United States is commonly recommended by doctors for babies when they're first picking up finger foods. And so there's a real moment to talk about nurturing and how a mother can nurture their children by having the cereal that their baby will pick up and eat on their own as a finger food. That's a very different opportunity than somebody who's worried about cholesterol and eats the cereal because it has whole grain oats and can lower their cholesterol level. But the insight is that both occasions ladder up to this brand essence around nurturing. In one case, a new mother is nurturing her child. In another case, a man is nurturing himself by lowering his cholesterol. And we at Cheerios had two very different messaging platforms from two different audiences, but the key was that they both laddered up to this idea around nurturing. And then the last question I have here before I'll go to yours for this webinar is how do you think social media has forced companies to be conformist? And I think the conforming aspect that I see in social media is where I started at the beginning, that many brands are looking at social media as a shiny new thing. They need to jump onto it. And they need to set up a Twitter account, set up a Facebook page, set up a YouTube channel. And they want to, and as a result, many of this marketing sounds exactly the same. The opportunity, though, is to think of those platforms not as the campaigns themselves, but as tools that can help you be more successful if you have creative marketing at the core. And so media is only as good as the ideas that we have behind them. And while many brands do conform and sound conformist, the opportunity is there for brands to be disruptive and different if they think about the purpose of the social media campaigns that they're trying to do. I'm trying to read the questions here. So, how do you think with the world of Facebook, Google, and Twitter, a new niche social network could establish itself? I think the opportunity there relates to the audience, relates to the audiences. That as some of these social media platforms are connecting with vast majorities, the opportunity is there to get very niche. And if you're an entrant in the category, if you have a niche approach and you can talk to an audience that's being underserved, it's the best way to break through the clutter. Because that underserved audience isn't being served by the mass market channels. So the opportunity is to go very niche, I think. Comment about the marketing of Instagram. Instagram is amazing, I think, has touched on the power of talking with visuals. Because as humans, we're wired to think visually. And it's something I've certainly seen as a cartoonist. The power of communicating with an audience in a visual way is incredibly powerful. And I think Instagram has partly been successful because we can capture so much in a picture that would take a long time to communicate in words. When you have 140 characters on Twitter, you're restricted in what you can say. But an Instagram photo can have instant appeal and spread it very virally. And I think there's powerful to communicate visual social media into more of what we do. And it's certainly why I'm excited about communicating with cartoons. Okay, do you think companies are more conformist? Okay, we talked about the conformist question a minute ago. Where do you get your creativity from? Particularly if there are no experts on the team. I think I certainly find my creativity as a cartoonist by recognizing that everybody has the capacity to be creative. We often find ourselves in marketing environments where people say, we need to talk to the creatives about this. And often they think of somebody at an agency to be creative. But there's potential for all of us to be creative. And I don't think in the business world, we give ourselves enough credit for that. So I think the opportunity is to look to our teams to provide ideas, but to do it in a way that's different than how we often do it. Often we think we have to be creative. Let's schedule a brainstorming meeting once a quarter or once a year, and we'll go to a creative place and we'll try to be creative. But there's more opportunity to be creative every single day, every single week, and to bring creativity into the everyday. And the opportunity, I think, for us is to surround ourselves with stimulus and with ideas, rather than just that once a year opportunity where we're coming up with ideas. One of the ways that I've done this in the past, we created an environment at Method. We called it the Wiki Wall. And we had every vertical surface in the Method office, we turned into a magnetic whiteboard where people could add ideas anytime, and people could add to those ideas all the time. So we didn't find a situation where we have a meeting where we were creative and then we have to clean up the meeting room. We had ideas all the time on the walls around us. And as a result, it ended up creating an opportunity where everybody could add and be creative rather than just being critical. So I think creating an environment within the team is quite powerful. Here, do we think political parties could be long-term brands? Do I think Obama's last social media campaign laid the foundations for easy leads to his target audiences in this year's election? Yes, I definitely think political parties can be brands. And I think not enough people in politics understand the power of that. I think that Obama's campaign certainly did, because it understood the importance of building a tribe and building an audience that felt engaged by what Obama was doing. Obama made his audience feel awesome. And as a result, they were empowered and did a lot of the marketing on his behalf. And that is an incredibly powerful contrast to how much of the marketing ended up working in this last campaign, where the United States was filled with attack ads, where both sides were running traditional television media attacking the other campaign. And interrupting the audience to try to interrupt them with their message. That version of marketing is very outdated. And I think one of the reasons that Obama has been successful is that his campaign team focused a lot of their marketing efforts on social media and reaching a niche audience in a powerful way that made them feel inspired and to do marketing on their behalf. And that's a real shift. It's a real opportunity, I think, for future campaigns to look at thinking of their political parties as a brand, and to think about connecting with their audiences the way that the best brands do, through social media and by talking with a niche audience in a powerful way. Why are comic books weighing off in terms of the printed form hard copy? I think that the challenge with traditional cartoons is that many cartoonists are used to chasing, are used to connecting the way they always have through the printed media, and fewer people are connecting with their media only in that way. And cartoons have been reluctant to shift to social media because they've been struggling to find a business model. I think that the world has never been stronger. As I answered in the question earlier about Instagram, there's never been a greater opportunity to communicate through visual media. That the visual media has changed. Cartoons will no longer be about just print or just magazines. It'll be around the audiences they connect with, and the best way to reach that audience with a continuous media over time. And so I think that some of the classic cartoons like Tin Tin can be successful if they adapt to where the audiences are today. But today, many of those brands have been resistant because they've been cautious about sacrificing their classic print publishing medium, and that's a real shift. Awesome. I think that's I think that got to the end of most of the questions. But I want to say how much I've enjoyed speaking with all of you today. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but it's been wonderful connecting with you. Hopefully, you picked up some of the insights that I picked up over my career as both a cartoonist and as a marketer. And I'm excited to meet some of you in person in 2 weeks in Dubai to spend more time talking in detail and in person about these topics.
Samsung Galaxy Note 2. Be creative.